McKay. Stop trying to fix me.
Hi everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? Awesome. I'm getting over a cold, so I don't normally sound like this, but we'll see how we go. I get a lot of emails and social media messages from people who have ideas for products and services and experiences for autistic people. These messages are usually phrased along the lines of, I've come up with this great idea and I'd really love your input. When this happens, I feel two things, and usually at the same time. I feel excited and curious, but I also get this sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. And as I'm opening the next email or attachment or opening the file, I'm sitting there saying, please, 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 don't be another thing designed to fix me. I open it, and it is. My autism isn't a tragedy to be erased or a problem to be fixed. I don't need you to teach me how to do something or help me fit into some backwards thing you call normal. My life has been harder than it should have been, and some days I experience some pretty challenging obstacles, but none of them are caused by my autism. When I reply to these emails, that's when things get really interesting. Interesting because what happens next shows why I keep getting these emails and why there is so much useless crap out there being designed for autistic people. That's something that needs fixing. These emails I receive, the conversations that follow, and some other examples that I'm going to show you highlight some major issues and demonstrate what not to do when designing for autism. The people who contact me have often jumped straight into solution mode and think that talking to me about their fully formed idea constitutes user research. They usually haven't done any user research with autistic people before reaching this point, and if they have, it tends to be a case of them just confirming what they think they already know. There are, of course, many issues with this researchless approach, but one of the most concerning for me as an autistic person is if you don't do user research, how do you know that the problem you've chosen to solve is the right one? And how do you even know if it is a problem at all? It's incredibly frustrating for me to see people do this. They're wasting their time, they're wasting my time, let's be honest here. But they're also contributing to and perpetuating those myths that they've bought into and are actually working against the autistics they're trying to support. Speaking of myths, I've learned that people just don't get autism. When people approach me with design ideas, they don't always understand what it means to be autistic. They don't know what might be helpful, and that would be okay, but unfortunately, I found that they usually don't want to know. They just want to know if I like their idea. They've often decided based on rumours, myths and stereotypes that autistic people have a problem with X and therefore solution Y is going to solve it. People tend to see autistics as the stereotypical super genius. We're viewed as antisocial, empathy-lacking robots, incapable of forming meaningful relationships. People think we're rude, annoying people who just aren't working hard enough to fit in or be normal. This, and I'm pointing to my rainbow hair and this amazing outfit, and me standing here delivering this talk is not often what comes to mind. But autism doesn't really have a look. It's invisible. You can't tell if a person is on the spectrum just by looking at them. I mentioned earlier that the most challenging aspects of my life are not caused by my autism. No, they're caused by the attitudes, behaviours, discrimination and abuse I experience at the hands of other people because of how they feel about my differences. There are people who have very good intentions, but say silly things like, oh, your autism must be mild, or you seem normal to me. Thanks to autism-related stigma, they see it as a compliment, when really it's actually quite marginalising because it diminishes my experiences. And there are people at the other end of the scale. I've repeatedly experienced bullying, gaslighting, discrimination, and psychological abuse. I've received hate mail, both in my inbox and the mailbox in my front yard. Diversity and inclusion doesn't always extend to me. I'm expected to conform. Despite being disabled, my differences and needs aren't always considered worthy of being met halfway. I'm an inconvenient nuisance. I have a strong support network, I really do. But the marginalisation I experience is still quite hard on me. Sometimes it makes me feel like I'm a piece of rubbish, something to be thrown away. It makes me feel small. It makes me feel powerless. Given that autism is a lifelong difference, when I think about the 60 or so years that lie ahead for me, it's hard not to feel anxious. Autism isn't a difficult thing to understand. All you have to do is be willing to listen and be open to the possibility that what you think you know isn't accurate or complete just yet. The third thing I've noticed about design for autism is that there's quite a bit of ableism out there. A shocking example crossed my Twitter feed a few months ago. Now, to be clear, the people behind it did not approach me. I just happened to see this. Pictured in this slide behind me is a robot that teaches emotion to autistic people because its creators feel that the solution to fixing the unemployment and underemployment of autistic adults is to train us to navigate office politics. This kind of approach says that there's something wrong with us. It says that we're the robots and we're a problem. It also says it's perfectly okay for people to not communicate clearly or directly, and that there's nothing wrong with saying one thing and meaning another. It normalises the bullshit that is office politics. And it places the blame on us. It trivialises our experiences. This is a serious issue that exists in workplaces everywhere and negatively impacts upon our quality of life. If you design something to fix or change an autistic person, you are not designing for autistic people. A lot of neurotypical people, and that is people who are not autistic or neurodiverse in any way, ask me things like, don't you want to be normal, or don't you want to fit in? I spent years of my life thinking I was some kind of monster that shouldn't be around other people because I just couldn't connect with them. I desperately wanted to fit in, and I tried so hard. I used to study other people and build up a repertoire of phrases and gestures like a pattern library, and then I would try to do it myself, but I always failed because I can't naturally read social cues or predict behaviour. This practice is called masking. You sort of hide your autism behind a mask and pretend to be normal. It's exhausting. No matter how hard I work, I'll always be guessing. And it hurts to keep that mask up. It's not sustainable, and it's certainly not fair. Why do I have to be normal? Why isn't it okay for me to just be who I am? What's so bad about being autistic? Accepting myself and embracing my differences actually brought a lot of peace and an overall sense of empowerment to my life. There are some things that I honestly cannot do, and it's completely okay. I can't drive a car. I spent 15 years and thousands of dollars trying to learn. People would tell me that I had to learn how to drive. They'd say it was weird that I didn't know how. I renewed my learner license 7 times. Operating the car while watching all the mirrors, the speedometer, what's in front of me, trying to focus on what that annoying instructor was saying, the weather, the road conditions, other drivers, and, well, kangaroos, like the one pictured here, because I live in Canberra, was too much for me. I couldn't do it all at once. If I was across the mirrors, I was speeding. And if I was watching my speed, I missed a mirror or a head check. You don't want me on the road. 3 months after receiving my autism diagnosis at the age of 29, my learner license was due for renewal again. I just cut it up. I switched to a proof of age card for my photo ID and the world did not end. Thank you. I have a right to choose how I live my life and decide what's best for me. I don't have to justify those choices to other people. I have my differences. There are things that I just can't do, and I annoy people with my lack of natural conversation skills. But you know what? Neurotypicals, you aren't exactly perfect either. No one is. That's the thing. Every single person is different in their own way, and that's a good thing. We should be designing to bring people together and learn how to meet each other halfway rather than trying to bring one group into line with the rest. Focusing design efforts on fixing autistic differences so that we fit in with everyone else goes against the diverse and inclusive society we all have a right to enjoy. But how do we do this? Let's talk about how we can design for autism in a way that's needed and wanted. Start by doing user research. It seems like a no-brainer, but the emails keep coming. When designing for autism, discovery research is absolutely essential. You need to ensure you have a good understanding of the autistic people you're designing for, and you need to develop that good understanding by talking to as many of us as possible. Including us in your research isn't difficult. It's not something you should be afraid of or feel intimidated by. There's a massive community of us on social media and blogs. Start there. See where it takes you. Reach out to autistic people and instead of just talking at them about your idea, recruit them as research participants. As you would with any other project, conduct structured research, offer incentives for our time, and don't just ask us for our opinion on XYZ and treat us like we should be grateful you even asked. Be upfront and clear about what you're researching and what you'll do with your findings and any recordings. Practice ethical research and be transparent. Also, learn to take no for an answer. If we don't want to participate, that should be okay too. And even if your design isn't specifically for autistic or neurodiverse people, you should still be including us in your research anyway and for everything. Because it's highly likely that whatever it is, a neurodiverse person will interact with it. Now, neurodiversity refers to people with different brains. So we're talking about autism, ADHD, dyslexia, and many, many more. Neurodiversity is everywhere. When considering what useful design for autism looks like, there's two ways of looking at it. Design that is specifically for autistic people, and inclusive design that is, of course, intended for use by the widest possible audience. Both approaches are valid and depend entirely upon what you're doing. I'm not going to tell you that one is better than the other. It really is a case of it depends. But they do have one thing in common, the need for flexibility. Flexibility both in your approach and the design that comes out the other end. Most days I wear noise-cancelling headphones. I wear the Bose Quiet Comfort 35s. They block out the right amount of audio in my surroundings so I can focus. They're wireless, comfortable, and they sit on top of my head, like over my ears, clearly communicating to everyone around me that I have checked out. They're also a product that anyone can buy. As an autistic person, I have sensory differences. I'm very sensitive to light and sound. Before I bought these headphones, I went through 4 other pairs from 4 different brands. Shopping centres can be quite overwhelming for me, so I had to buy them all online. I couldn't try them out before I bought them, so it was a pretty expensive and wasteful process. The other pairs were all of a similar quality and price. If only there had been a way to flexibly try out all 5 pairs. Funnily enough, Bose offers a 30-day trial guarantee to its US customers, just not in Australia. When designing flexibly for autism, don't take my choices away from me. Don't punish me for needing to do something differently. All options and pathways should lead to an equal outcome. For example, communicating with service providers in writing via email or social media instead of calling should allow me to complete the same task within a reasonable time frame. I once sent an email to an airline, and the automated response I received said that it would be up to 21 days before I should expect a reply, and if that was too long, I should call them. It's actually really hard for me to communicate with people I don't know over the phone. View autism and other neurological differences the same way you would any other disability, with respect. You wouldn't tell a wheelchair user to take the stairs, so don't try to force an autistic person to make eye contact or put them in a situation or environment that goes against their sensory needs. Don't view designing to support autistic differences as some additional thing you need to do. Be inclusive by default. Before I wrap this thing up, we need to talk about language. It's very important when researching and designing for autistic people that you practice inclusive language. You may have noticed that throughout this talk, I've been using identity-first language. I've been referring to myself as an autistic person rather than a person with autism. When we talk about disability, we're often told to use person-first language to separate the person from the disability, but autism is quite different in that regard. Like many other autistic people, I feel that my autism sits at the very core of my identity. It's not something that I just kind of lug around with me in my purse. It's my brain. It's present in everything I think and feel and do. You can't separate me from it, and that's a good thing. Getting diagnosed as autistic at the age of 29 made me feel whole. It's who I am, and I'm damn proud of it. Avoid using terms like suffers from autism, trapped by autism, and the creepiest one I've heard so far, touched by autism. I can assure you, autism does not go around touching people. Also avoid using functioning labels. So my official diagnosis under the DSM-5 is quite a mouthful and is autism spectrum disorder level 1. If I'd been diagnosed before May 2013, they would have called it Asperger's syndrome. I identify as autistic. I feel that it's more inclusive because functioning labels exclude parts of the spectrum and diminish the validity of experiences had by an already marginalised group. Try not to think of it in terms of mild or severe. Autism is autism. All autistic needs are valid, no matter how mild you think a person's existence is. Sometimes people find the term autistic to be offensive. They don't always understand how a neurological disability can be viewed in a positive light in relation to identity. Me accepting my differently wired brain isn't an insult or a cause for offence. I have a right to choose what I do with this brain of mine. I have a right to decide how I refer to myself, and I have a right to have those choices respected. I, like everyone else, deserve to be treated equally. To me, that's what design for autism, and inclusive design for that matter, is all about. It's about equality. It's about creating a level playing field and fixing this world, not people, so that everyone, regardless of their entry points, is afforded the same opportunities and experiences. It's about celebrating the beauty in human differences rather than forcing conformance to create beauty that just isn't human. As for those emails, I don't want to discourage you from continuing to send them to both me and other autistic people because I am just one voice here. If the key message you take away from this talk is don't send Ashlea emails, then I have failed spectacularly. I just want you to have a think about everything I've said. Listen to me, listen to other autistic adults, keep listening. and see what you can do so that we can meet in the middle and work together to make things better for everyone. Thank you.
Alley Camp, October 2018.